I'm happy to introduce you to Matt Loux and Abby Denson, who I have known for a really long time. They're both cartoonists. They both came out with books on October 18th. Is that right? And they're both published by First Second, and they're married.
Okay,
So-
then our heads explode.
Yeah, so everybody, yeah, it's kind of
to each other.
Yeah, there's another married couple.
That's a good
here,
detail.
Ashley and Jeff. There, you can see their names right there, so they'll be really interested. So we're here to talk about the books that you just published. So why don't we just start off with each of you telling us like your elevator pitch of what the books are, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty questions.
Cool. Yeah, I'll start. So yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Matthew Loux. I've been a cartoonist for a while now. The book that I just came out is called Prunella and the Cursed Skull Ring. Basically, it's about a girl who lives in a town that really hates monsters. And she's sort of indifferent. She's a little too young to have an opinion. But one day when she's digging in her garden, she finds this really interesting ring with the shape of a skull on it. So when she puts it on, it actually finds out that it's cursed and it turns her into a skeleton monster, and then she cannot take it off. The town where she lives in freaks out. They kick her out thinking she's just a monster that kind of got in, and then she's out in the wilderness on her own. When she actually starts to discover real monster tribes, she kind of learns they're actually really nice, really helpful, very interesting, and really exciting. So she kind of has a whole new experience. Many of them even come together to try to help her to find a way to break the curse, and eventually she kind of has to decide, does she even want to break the curse?
Oh my gosh, what a great elevator pitch. I love it. I love it. Okay, Abby.
Yes, so my latest book is Kitty Sweet Tooth Makes a Movie, which is the second or sequel to book one, Kitty Sweet Tooth. It's part of the Kitty Sweet Tooth series that's illustrated by Udo Maru. And in the first book, Kitty is managing a movie theater where she programs B movies with crazy desserts that go wild because they're made by a mad scientist and a witch. And then in this one, she directs her own movie. So her and her friends go all over the place with this transforming vehicle, and they go into outer space and they go underwater, all over the place, directing a movie, and it's really fun. And the illustrations by Udo Maru are amazing. So yeah, it's really fun. It's more of like the really cute, fun stuff that was in book one.
Okay, so just in those short little descriptions that you gave, I feel like I want to hear so much more about Matt, about where your idea for the story came from and about your creative process, especially with the using watercolor for the whole book. I'd love to know how long the book was. And with you, Abby, I would love to hear about the collaboration with Udo Maru, because I think you have known her for a while, right? And you guys go to Japan together, and I feel like there's Japanese influence on both of your books. So, oh my God, I don't even know where to get started. Where should we start?
Matt, I can start.
Yeah, so I'll start. Where I came up with the idea, I gotta be honest, I kind of can't remember where its origins came from. It was a while ago where I originally thought of it. All I can think of, and this definitely happens, I think I've talked with you before about this, but some of the inspirations for a lot of my work really do come from visual ideas, often first before I come up with actual plots or actual motifs, maybe even. But yeah, this probably was a lot more inspired by a feeling, the feeling of like things like Studio Ghibli movie type feels. Even just the feeling of the medium of watercolor. I think anyone who's worked with watercolor before can kind of tell you there's just a mood to that kind of painting that you really can't capture even with other types of paint. And that's probably the direction I went with. And I'm like, well, obviously I would really like to do something that's like a fairy tale. And a fairy tale like would look great as kind of a traditional children's book style, hand painted. and fantasy is the best, obviously the best genre of children's books. So, because you can just have so much fun.
Obviously.
Yeah, I'm being tongue in cheek, but they're just so much fun with visuals, so much fun with like the forests and the environment that you can create, and creatures that you can create. So that's kind of yeah, the actual idea I don't totally remember, honestly. I'm afraid I don't have a better answer. But yeah, you also said that I hand painted the entire book. It was 160 pages, live pages of hand painted, and it was a challenge for sure, because I'd done plenty of painting, as you know, but doing an illustration versus entire comic book, which isn't even just like one illustration per page, it's like sometimes up to like 6, between 3 and 6 for all the panels. So it was definitely time consuming, definitely tricky kind of figuring out my method, tricky figuring out the materials also, because you have to juggle something that works with the inking, that's nice and at least smooth enough to be able to handle your inking, because I ink by hand with a brush, and then also works with the painting. So I tried so many different papers to varying levels of success. And it was definitely a journey for sure.
Oh my gosh. So tell us what was the paper that you ended up using? Are there any other specific tools or brands that you feel like these were the ones that ended up being the best?
Sort of. I can't even count exactly how, definitely like at least a dozen different types of paper. I found that it really depends on your method of painting, because I paint in a watercolor way that a lot of people would kind of consider not your typical way of painting with watercolor. I do a lot of layering. A lot of watercolor paper, the really expensive stuff, it really is very robust. It can handle a lot of water. It's not always good at absorbing color. And since I do layering, if the paint is sitting on the top of the paper too much, any bit of water added to it, it'll just reconstitute and get all crazy again. So I actually like, if I can find it, a slightly cheaper brand of paper that absorbs it and almost stains the paper a bit. So my general go-to was a Bristol, like a Strathmore Bristol 500 series, which is a high quality series. I would try to get like the full sheets of them, because there's a particular one, not all of them, it's super weird, some of them are different, but there's a particular one that has just a finish that has a very minor texture to it. And it's like the 4-ply, so it's extra thick. Although that's the other one that I like the most was this brand of multimedia sketchbooks, or not sketchbooks, but art books that I would get in Japan. I think we were called Holbein, and it was like a specific kind that was like a thicker version, because I could only get them in Japan. And like when lockdown happened, you couldn't ship anything from Japan, so I couldn't use that paper anymore because I couldn't have anyone send it to me, and I ran out with what I had. So that was frustrating. So I had to like try so many different things. I can't even say what's my favorite. Those are the ones that are closest to the best. I've never really found like the perfect paper, unfortunately, but I just did what I could with what I had.
Show a couple of pages.
Sorry?
Can you show some pages of?
Yeah. So let's see. This is a nice double page spread that I did. And it's like Prunella first discovers like
Wow.
one of the main monster villages. And I just had a ball just throwing as much detail as I could.
Wow.
Different layer, like things in the background, things in the foreground, different monsters. Definitely has kind of a Japanese side street like kind of style to it. Like
Absolutely. Wow.
And this paper, I think this was the paper, the Holbein paper that I was describing. And here's another one. And this is on the Strathmore Bristol. And this one, the fun reveal of when she first puts on the ring and then turns into a skeleton monster.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to ask, so was Prunella inspired by Abby?
What makes you say that?
She looks exactly like Abby as a skeleton.
That's funny. Yeah, honestly, no, but the hair, perhaps. You know, a lot of my characters, I can't help but like default to my love of curly hair. So,
I love curly hair too. I'm very jealous.
I always wished I had straight hair, so it's one of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Matt's really good at drawing curly hair.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I guess Abby, why don't you tell us a little bit about, because there's a lot of Japan in your project too, but from a in totally different ways. So you can tell
Yes.
us about that.
So this was a collaboration with Itamaru. The Kitty Sweet Tooth character and story I wrote and created, but I drew, when we were collaborating on it, I gave her my sketches of the characters and then she interpreted them in her amazing way. And we have a lot of the same interests and taste. So like we had met actually at a bar in Tokyo that was movie themed after the Italian movie Suspiria. And we both really love like campy B movies and cult movies. So in book one and in this book, there are a lot of references to them. So for instance, in this one, like we both really liked Mad Max Fury Road. So there's a scene where we have Kitty up against a gang, like racing against a biker gang in the desert, and they're kind of inspired by that. And she just puts so much fun detail. But the way that we collaborate is basically I write a script, and then if there's like a specific scene where I wanted to tell her it should look a specific way, I'll give her tight direction, but she really can kind of run with whatever because she's so good. Like she's a genius totally. So I don't even have to give her that much direction on the images, but I knew that there would be a transforming vehicle. So I was thinking what vehicles I thought were cool. So one of the things was I asked her to reference the illustrations of Chris Foss, who is one of the sci-fi illustrators who Alien was based on some of those, like the spaceship, and also Akira Toriyama from Dragon Ball. Like in Dragon Ball, there are a lot of really cool vehicles. So I was just giving her a reference of those things and saying I want it to be inspired by that stuff. But she totally, made her own great vehicles with that input. So, but we're both inspired by anime and manga, and of course, cute stuff. Recently somebody compared this to Sanrio, which I hadn't really even thought of, but I could kind of see that because it's like a cute cat,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Also the color scheme, I feel like the palette is very I don't know, candy colored and
oh yeah, absolutely. Like I wanted everything to pop as much as possible, and both the books are designed that way. And also like both of the books have like what I call secret cover, like a totally alternate cover design under here.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of fun working with everybody, with Udamaru and with our designer Molly on this stuff.
Yeah, I was listening to a talk by Kirk Benshoff recently, who's the art director at First Second, and he was talking about how he says to all the creators he works with to think of the the cover and the copyright page and the title page like the credits of a movie, where it's kind of like getting you into the mood and like leading you into the story. And that's, yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah, totally. That's a good way of putting it, to get you all hyped up and excited to like get
Mhm.
into it. Yeah, totally. And then since you mentioned Japan, I don't like my other recent book. I don't think I got to talk about it at KCU yet, but it's uniquely Japan. And this is a nonfiction book that I drew that has a lot of different Japanese topics. So this is what my art looks like. So as you can imagine, it's very fun for someone who does their own art to get to work with an artist who has a completely different style. I found it really fun.
So when you pitched the project to First Second, did you already have Utomaru on board?
Yes.
Okay.
Like-
Did you have a collaboration agreement with her beforehand? How did
Well,
you decide?
I guess it's actually kind of, I sort of did, whereas like so now that I think about it, it was so long ago, probably like 2017 or earlier. So it takes a very long time for this stuff to happen. I think what happened actually is I had the idea, and actually I even have sketches from 2014 where I was drawing stories about it. Because Kitty Sweet Tooth is a character that I've been drawing basically as a version of me for Autobio comics for a while. So it's kind of funny that she's starring in an adventure. But I had known the other Callista, and I had talked to her about pitching Kitty Sweet Tooth. She was interested, but I wanted to like come up with an illustrator, and I had known Utomaru for a while, and I loved her art. So she was kind of like my dream collaborator, and I basically just like asked her about it, and she was interested. So we didn't do any kind of paperwork at that time because, I just was kind of like, would you be interested in doing it? And then I think all of that really came into play more when you're working on the contract. So, so she will. Oh, I did pay her a fee, like for the illustrations. I was like, we want a character sheet, and I think it was 2 or 3 sample pages. So I did pay her like like a rate for that, and then just as if I was paying an illustrator,
You mean
and
for
then
the proposal that you sent?
yeah,
to
just for the proposal. So I think that as an artist, and I think most artists would agree, you want to be paid for your works, and especially if you're doing a proposal, like there's no guarantee that will go anywhere. So I thought it was fair to like pay for that, like if I was commissioning art.
And so then what happened is First Second made an offer, and did they give offers separately to you and to Utomaru?
It was let me think about it, so long ago. Okay, so it was like we did a contract, we each had our own contract, but like in our case, I had the same like that my agent negotiated both of us, because Utomaru, it was her first book here and she didn't have an agent here, and so
Yeah, it was all done together.
It was done together.
The contracts when it was all agreed upon were separate, but like you guys, it was all, the offer was all together.
yeah, we did everything together that way. But yeah, like the details kind of came in when you get an actual offer, and then you're working with it, how you want to do. But we like talked about it beforehand, about generally what we were expecting and what we would want.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I hope everybody here is thinking of questions, because I'm going to ask one more question and then I'm going to open it up. So what is it like being married to a cartoonist when you are a cartoonist? I'm going to assume that it's awesome. But I just tell me like how you guys help each other, what's awesome about it, and then maybe if there's anything that's not awesome about it.
Well, the best part for me is that it's just really nice to be able to have a sounding board about my stories or my ideas or even the full scripts. One thing, Abby is much better at like catching spelling mistakes and like grammatical things and commas, and those plague me. I don't know where commas go. So that's always great, and just kind of being like, what do you think of this idea for this story? And she can give me really good input, and vice versa, I hope. Yeah. And then because Abby's, you know, has a pretty big history of a scriptwriter also, like your input is like definitely very helpful. I've only ever just written my own stuff, so you've actually written for other artists in a lot of different ways and styles, so yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of what Matt was saying was similar, where it is nice to have somebody in-house that you can run your idea by and be, or if you, especially like if you have drafts and we read each other's drafts, we check for mistakes. And while like I can check
Yeah.
for spell, I'm more of like his spell checker. He's good at visual stuff. So if there's like some continuity error with the images, he's a lot better at catching that stuff than me, where he might be like, oh, the color is not the same in here, there. And one of the things I find is interesting is that he and I have very different color palettes and color sensibility. But I think that like, it's kind of cool because I can appreciate his more subtle color and he can appreciate my more intense colors that I like, but it's neat, you know, when we are in totally different styles than each other and we can appreciate that. And also, I will say something too, is that like when we were starting dating and stuff, like both being cartoonists is cool because as a lot of people probably know, cartooning can really take you all day and all night, and it's very time consuming. And when you're dating, like, you know, a lot of times people might not understand that. Somebody who's not in the world of freelancing or whatever might not get it. But I remember, if, you know, there were times where he's like, oh, I'm deadline, I can't hang out for like a month or something. I'm like, oh, that's fine, I get it. You know, I got I got stuff to do. So, you know, and vice versa. So there wasn't any kind of, you know, issues or arguing about the time, you know, management or time commitment. So that's cool.
Can you guys hear my son playing video games in the background?
Oh, now I can. It's okay. Our cat was just, he came in and was interrupting for a bit too. So
I'm gonna ask him to be quiet in a moment, but so who has a question for Abby or Matt or both? I saw Bob, you had a question, but you said it was sort of answered, but
Yeah. Yeah. But I was just on the gist of it was does having different aesthetics and different tastes must enrich the relationship between you two, right?
I think so.
For sure. There are definitely things that I would not have discovered on my own, you know, just not even creatively, but just like story wise, you know, movies that like you kind of exposed me to, and music too. You know, and your color sensibility, like I tended to go a lot more like representational, but I definitely kind of like, oh, you can kind of go a little further with like more like poppy colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm always blown away by Matt's skills. So I'm just, oh, I could also be like, Matt, you're so good at drawing straight lines. Can you do whatever? There's more precision stuff. I always have Matt help
or
in the household. He's very, very good at precise and detail-oriented work.
which is kind of interesting, Matt, because I always also think of your style as being very fluid and very it's so gestural, the way that you do your art. So that combination of precision with fluidity and spontaneity is really nice.
Thank you. It's all a lie, because like I'm not one of those artists that can just go blah 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 and it looks like so energetic and spontaneous. But I know that's important, like, so I really try to push that, but I do it in like at least the finished lines, I do it in a very meticulous way. Maybe I'm a little looser in the beginning, and maybe my thumbnails help, because I do thumbnails of the entire book, and I usually try to really just kind of go for it with the energy and the direction, and you know, of each panel on each page. But thank you. I really do. I'm very jealous of. There's a lot of cartoonists that are really amazing at just one line is all they need to put down, you know, with the inking. There's a ton of artists that are like that, and someday maybe I could attempt that, but I don't know if I can let go of the control.
I thought of something else fun too, is that we do, travel a lot and we do a lot of adventures. So like one thing I thought that was fun that we did together that was related to his comics is we went to MoMA at night and looked at the mummy, not MoMA, sorry, the Met at night and looked at the mummies. And we went through all this because Matt's time museum, he needed to do research for some ancient Egypt. And that was really fun, but it was kind of like we're going and doing this together, but it's part of his project. So I think it's fun to be able to do that. Plus, I think even like the Japan, like we traveled to Japan together a lot and we've got to see a lot of exhibits and a lot of different really cool sites or locations and destinations that you can really see inspired Prunella.
Yeah,
even on the
definitely.
cover, like you can see there's a torii and different kind of roof tile. It's very much inspired by that.
Yeah, there's a lot. That's just, again, like the feel of certain neighborhoods. There are just certain areas of Japan, and even in like a place as metropolitan as Tokyo, where you just find these little alleyways that are not flat. They're all rickety. Everything suddenly looks like it's from like 100 years ago, and like nothing would be anything code in America. It's everything's like tiny, shoved together, falling over each other, and it's magical. It's great, and there's these beautiful lanterns just hanging out, and it's there's nothing like it. It's like a really, and there are places that are even more like older that are like that in different parts of Japan, and it's not to over romanticize, but there are aspects of that culture that are really cool and very pretty.
And also Matt is a character in Cool Japan Guide and Cool Tokyo Guide, which are my other Japan books. So he's actually a cartoon character in there. So it's like I'm in it, he's in it, my friend Yuko and Kitty Sweet Tooth are all in those books. And you can see how I draw Matt.
That's so awesome. So people yeah, Ashley, I think you had a question.
Oh, yes. I was just going to ask if you guys have worked on a project together.
No, actually.
Well, he did a sample. He did a guest page.
We tried a few things. Oh yeah, I did do a sample.
He did a guest page for Cool Tokyo Guide, and he's a character in Cool Tokyo Guide. So his artwork's in there, and but we don't that often. I don't know if we've done it where like one of us wrote a story and the other person drew it.
Just haven't had the opportunity, because we both kind of each are working on our own like big projects usually. And like this tends to be this sort of thing I do. Like I would love to do more like shorter projects, and it would be really fun like if an IDW or a smaller or company that does like issues asked us to collaborate. That would be really fun. Yeah,
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Well, actually that reminds me, I wanted to ask, so is there a third Kitty Sweet Tooth coming? And also what's your next project, Matt?
I don't have anything set yet, but it's definitely possible.
What else did you say?
Oh, I said, what about you, Matt? Now that you've finally finished Prunella, what's the project you're working on now?
I'm working on Time Museum 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and pitches. I want to do some other stuff also after that. So I'm kind of playing around with different ideas. But yeah, right now I'm working on Time Museum 3.
Okay, actually, I think that Tracy asked about the proposal process or pitching. I don't know if Tracy can talk because I think she said she's at work, but Tracy, if you cannot unmute yourself, don't worry, but.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for your time and sharing your art and your passion. But yes, I was wondering, how do you go about your proposal process? And you just mentioned you're doing pitching and stuff. So like, what's your process?
It's a very good question. My process, the process starts with, the idea, and then kind of getting as far along with it, or as solid of an idea as you can, to the point where I can actually just write out like what the story is going to be for my project or how I would like it to be. The actual proposal that I want to sell, obviously a lot of people do it in different ways, and even we do it in different ways. So most kids comic publishers, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of them kind of don't want a finished product before they buy it. So I definitely don't bother to do the whole thing or even a large amount of it. I don't even write the whole story usually. But again, I've been published before, so they know I'm good for it. But usually it'll be a nice tight, really like elevator pitch paragraph to start off with of this is what this is all about. This is what, and it sounds really cool. And then I try to like expand a little bit on each next part. Like the first one has to be like, if you read it, you can immediately say, oh, I'm interested enough to read the next paragraph. And then I'll open it up a little bit, like the mood is going to be this style of story. And then it's like the format is it's going to be a trilogy that's going to be like this, or this is going to be a different artist or whatever. Then I'll expand by writing like the characters, like so and so, the main characters and all the different characters. And then I'll have like just a pretty thorough, not crazy long, but thorough description of the entire plot. And then usually you need to have a couple of sample pages or script pages, depending on how you're selling it. Obviously, if you can have visuals with your proposal, it's always a lot better because it's easier to see. It's easier to see how it's going to look. It seems obvious, I guess, when you've got the art, and that's obviously the benefit of being the artist also with a writer. I don't know, Abby, you can talk about the collaboration aspect of the pitch since you did that with this Kitty Sweet Tooth.
I think it was not that different because since we were together, a lot of times I did take cues from Matt sometimes on his pitch formatting, because my journey of being in comics is like very long and very varied. So, and I feel like with every kind of publisher, they're different, or what genre you're in and what level of publisher it is. So, or what size of publisher. So when I started out, I was self-publishing, and then I went with some kind of subversive, kind of underground kind of publishers that were like one person or two person ran it, but they put out basically exactly what I gave them with like no editorial, because like and it was done. It was like already had been published in zines, and they knew they liked it. They wanted it and put it out. And that's like the most artistic freedom you can possibly have, but you also want, it's not like you're going to be getting big advances or anything. It's a small publisher. But then I started getting into doing, and this isn't, and separately from scripting for things like DC and whatnot, which is a totally different story. Getting into doing nonfiction books with Tuttle was kind of also spun off from my self-publishing, because I had done mini comics about being in Japan, and with my friends and I met, like I went to an expo where the publisher had a table where I spoke with the guy there. I gave him my mini comic, and he like basically right there was like, oh, we should do a book with you. I was like, all right, see, self-publishing really works.
When you were doing the pitch with Tomorrow though, like did you do script sample? I forgot. I think I might have done a script sample, but for that part, I was doing like what, kind of like what Matt did, because he had more experience doing in that genre of kids books and like working with First Second and other like that in that kind of format. So since you already had Tomorrow agreed to collaborate, then you could get those pages to show them.
Yeah, so like I think what we needed was there was a pitch, the synopsis, and character. That's something you usually do, which is a character sheet, which basically is a breakdown of the main characters and what stuff about them, details about them. But you didn't mention this, and I think you usually do this in your pitches, and is a theme.
Oh yes, yeah.
So and to me, like the idea of the theme is almost like a mood. I don't want to say a moral exactly, but it's kind of like, especially for kids books, I think the publishers, you want to have a theme where it's kind of like, my theme was about friends coming together and creating something for their community, is like the theme of Kitty Sweet Tooth series, right?
Yeah.
It's not specific to everything, but it's like you want to have an overarching theme that kids might get and that parents might get out of the book.
Yeah. And for the pitch, you wanted to spell it out because, like, obviously with the story, when you write out what's happening, it's like, oh, it's a girl who becomes a monster and then finds other monsters. That is the story of Prunella, but the theme of Prunella is she learns about tolerance, and she learns about, there are people, she learns how to find her people, and learns that there are different people outside of the community she was born in. So that's an important theme, that's not really so specifically stated in the book.
Yeah, and I
but,
think having a theme is like attractive for editors of all ages books. And then the other thing too is, yeah, we did a visual character design sheet, and I think like 3 pages of samples, but some sample pages, but some publishers will ask you for more depending on your experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, it varies, and also depends on your level of experience. If you've done books before, you probably don't have to have as much, particularly if you're pitching the same publisher. If you're trying to go for a different publisher, you might be kind of, you've got that, you've done stuff before, but it might be starting almost from scratch sometimes.
There's something that's kind of neat, and that also I got from Matt's experience, and that was that, like, when you pitch one book, and that it's a possibility for a series, it's good just to put synopsis for like book 2 and book 3 in your pitch, because you can sell them all at once, and then that's very different than like one at a time. That takes longer. And then if they like it, then you have 2 book deals or 3 book, 3 book deal instead of a 1 book deal.
Yeah, it's important to be flexible, but state what you want from the very get-go. Like, to say, if you really want this to be a series, be very upfront about it, and be very, I want this to be 3 books, or I want this, and they might be like, we'll try 1, and then you're like, sure. But you be straightforward, like, I want this to be this, and then often they'll be like, well, we want this too, so let's do it the way we want to do it.
Yeah.
But also, if you have an agent, they can obviously give you the best input on what publishers are looking for what, and what's the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. That was super informative. I loved it.
Oh,
Good.
Glad.
I'm glad.
Good luck. Good luck.
So I saw that Ashley, you had a really technical question. So maybe we can quickly answer that. And then Tintin had a question, which I thought was a great question. So I want to go back to Tintin's question. So first, Ashley said, for Matt, do you water paint each panel individually on its own page, or did you paint an entire book page or even a spread at a time?
Oh, I did them like normal pages, which I know what you're saying. Some people will just do them as separate illustrations and composite them together. I needed to do it like this way. Here's another example. I had to do it this way just so I could get the page composition, because that's really important for the visual direction of a book. So like, even though it can be a bit tricky, like you can bleed over and stuff, and like some people can use masking tape to kind of keep things in line. I just need to be able to have a full control of the composition of the page composition and page direction, because that's extremely important for me in my work and for comics in general. And if I was doing them separately, I would lose sight of that. Like, I'd be like, well, this little illustration looks good, but then I'd be like, oh, it has a weird lineup with the one below it now that looks like it's connected now or something. And whatever, you got to avoid tangents and that sort of thing when you're doing comics. So I just made it work this way, and it was fine, because you can, even though this was all painted by hand, I did quite a bit of digital cleanup on everything, and I did mess up pages where I had to composite in a different panel, to fix stuff. So
yeah, composition is really important. So that's a really good point.
And page turns are also really important. Something for people who are starting out, especially if they're writing, to think about, because I've been getting much more mindful of like, well, what would be a good, what is a good end for, an even page versus an odd page, and what is a good reveal that's a physical page turn. It's obviously a bit different if your stuff is digital, but for most kids' books tend to be physical. So like when, the big monster page, this obviously has to be a page turn because it's a double page spread. But it's like, you can manipulate the reader's attention, their what they look at, and the excitement, because they physically have to take a half a second to flip the page. So that's why I like to try to start new scenes on a page turn, because then you physically are kind of washing away the last scene in your brain and you're moving it. So things to think about.
Have you considered doing a gallery show of your art, Matt, since it's physical?
Yeah, it would be rad, but I don't know any galleries. Like,
Oh, it would be so
somebody
fun.
approached me, I would do it, but I'm not at all connected to that scene.
Somebody please give Matt a show. Oh my God, that would be amazing. Because yeah,
That'd be fun.
only I get to see this. Only Matt.
Yeah.
And
You know what? Do you know Tenri in New York City? It's like a Japanese cultural center thing, and they have Japanese language classes there, and they have gallery spaces, and they rent it out. It's right by Union Square.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and Misako, I think she had an event there once. I don't know how expensive it is, but anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, believe me,
So-
I you all can see it because there are some really gorgeous pages here.
Yeah, for sure. So I have to go pretty soon, but I really wanted to get to Tintin's question. Tintin, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was just asking how you were promoting, because I know you attend a lot of shows and talks, I think. So have you taken to social media? How's that to further the reach? Like, I would love to see process videos on YouTube for one thing, because I'm like an art materials junkie. But yeah.
We did a lot of, we've lived in the New York area for a while, so we did a lot of our own kind of like, we know this bookstore, let's approach them. We've had stuff at this place, so we did our best for local stuff. For online stuff, I don't really do videos. I haven't really been good at doing videos. I wouldn't mind trying it someday, but I don't have a good phone right now for that. I'd have to it's a whole different muscle, and it's a bit tricky. It's hard to, some people are really good at being like, I'm good at spending the years isolated doing the book, and I'm also really good at knowing how to be good on camera and be good at, or even technically how to make a YouTube video. I've never even tried to do a YouTube video, so I don't even know how to do that. I don't know, like, it does sound like it would be fun to figure that out. I did my best to do like a lot of like kind of process posts on my Instagram that are like stills and some descriptions of it. It's one of those things too. It's like I finished doing all the paintings for the pages like over a year ago. So I can't really be, and I'm not doing a painted book right now, so I can't really be like, I'm working on this, so here's the painting I'm doing. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question that well, but it's definitely not my strongest point is the promotion, to be honest. I can make the books, but I don't always know what I'm doing when it comes to all the other stuff.
Hi, Tintin. Good to see you.
What did you say, Abby?
Yeah. So I also don't really love making videos, but it's unfortunate because like I feel like that's definitely the best way of getting yourself out right now is to do things like YouTube and TikTok. But Matt, especially because he has a very intense kind of visual process that I think would be fun to look at on YouTube. For me, I also don't really like it when people watch me draw that much. Because I feel like being an artist, sometimes I've even been approached to be like, oh, can you do like a live painting thing? And I'm like, no, I don't want people to watch me painting. No. Then you see all these other people who are like incredible and can just do an amazing live drawing or live painting as like part of the entertainment at a cafe or something. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I just like to just kind of do it myself.
I also know that I would just fall down the rabbit hole of like figuring out editing my videos. Like one, I don't think I would enjoy just having to repeatedly watch myself talk, but also just it would take me way too long, and it would waste comic making time for me to make a video, to make what would be a good video for me to feel okay to put it out in the world.
I feel that way too, but I remember like one of the things I did do, because when Kitty Sweet Tooth 1 came out, it was still, more towards the beginning of the pandemic, and there was no vaccines yet, and we couldn't do anything. So I made a trailer, and I learned how to like make a trailer, and I found myself obsessively editing, and I was editing like I was like late night for like a lot. This was for like a 30-second video, and Matt was like, where are you? When are you gonna stop working on video? So I feel like it would be hard for me to get into that as a regular kind of thing. Though I did learn how to make GIFs or GIFs. So if you go on if you search Kitty Sweet Tooth in Giphy and like Instagram and all that, you can find Kitty Sweet Tooth stuff. And I thought that was kind of fun, and it wasn't that hard to do. So that's kind of a fun and free thing you can do, is you go to Giphy, make an artist account, and you can create your own ones. And I just thought that was fun. But yeah, we've been doing some in person and doing videos like this. And I'm going to be at Anime NYC on Sunday. So that'll be my first time there in ages. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah, it's still, I feel like, challenging in this pandemic situation to be doing the kind of promotion that I would like to.
One thing I've been thinking about in terms of using YouTube to promote children's books is personally, I think trailers are fun to make, but I don't know how much they move the needle in terms of book sales. But I do think, though, that actually reading your book on YouTube, even just like a chapter, and especially maybe if you could get a kid to read it, and literally just like show the pages and you hear the voice reading the story, that's super valuable, because teachers now, especially because of the pandemic, they look on YouTube for stories to read to the kids in class.
Oh,
And
cool.
if the kids if they like it, and especially if it's like just a preview, you're not reading the whole book, you're just reading a portion of it. And then you could use the YouTube description to use some keywords that teachers might be ways that you could connect your story to things that teachers might be teaching, or
Oh yeah,
subjects.
I think that's smart, and I feel like people have already been doing it, because sometimes like I see I think like with Cool Japan Guide, there are definitely YouTube videos up there of somebody who's reading it. I think people have been doing it already, but yeah, it's a good idea. So I think I saw somebody ask what was the platform for the GIFs. Is GIPHY, like Giphy.com. You can go there and make your own.
So I have to wrap it up a little bit early, like I said, but I wish I didn't have to run, because this has been so much fun. So
Thank you for having us.
yes, I hope everybody saw that. Oh, I put the links to Matt and Abby's books up in the chat. And when we post the replay from this interview, we will put the links to the books there as well. So everybody, please unmute yourselves so we can say thank you. And now I see Gibson's comment, and I'm laughing too.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
you.
Good night, everybody.